Hello, wonderful people. Welcome to Common Censored. I'm Lee Camp here with Eleanor Goldfield.
Hello, hello.
This is the show where we talk censored stories and people, sensible solutions, and common ground movements to fight and build.
And sometimes other shite.
And sometimes other stuff. We are free every week on all wherever you get your podcast. You guys probably know that. This is something I wanted to lead with this week and let everybody know. We've had great live stream conversations with all of y'all, as many of you as wants to come hang out with us. And this coming one will be Friday. This coming Friday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Only at youtube.com/moment of clarity. It's completely free to attend. It's about an hour long, and we chat with you. We answer your questions. We talk about a lot of topics similar to the podcast, except we actually get to interact with you. And it's cool because, you know, I don't get to tour anymore. I don't get to meet everybody. I don't get to say hi, shake hands, high five. So this is the digital high five.
It's the virtual how do you do?
Virtual, how do you do? So again, that is this Friday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern.
July 3rd.
July 3rd at youtube.com/moment of clarity. That is not the normal redacted YouTube channel. This is my own channel, youtube.com/moment of clarity. Okay, let's get into it. This is already shaping up to be I don't know. Every week shapes up to be like the end of days, but then the next week we're ender of days. And then it's enderer of days.
Where's the endest of days?
And the endest of days. How does it get crazier each week? A couple of things of note. The Civil Rights Act anniversary is today. It was signed in 1964.
After an 83-day filibuster in the Senate. And of course, the civil rights.
That's a long filibuster.
It is. Which really just goes to
shows
show
the determination.
How dare you allow black and white people to use the same water fountain, you fucking monsters. So that basically among other things, the Civil Rights Act outlawed discrimination in public accommodations like restaurants, hotels, which ended the era of legal segregation in those places. And of course, It's important to point out the word legal.
Right.
Because what is legality without the enforcement of that law? And as we know, the enforcement has been rather on the side of racism as opposed to the side of anti-racism. And of course, people have pointed out, for instance, that schools are now more segregated than they were just after the rules to end segregation in schools. And then
a recent, actually in my book, I cover some of the studies that show that systemic racism still exists. And one of those is the massive funding gap between predominantly white schools and not predominantly white schools. And it's billions of dollars, I think $3 or $4 billion more go to the predominantly white schools. So while we can run around and say, oh no, we have equality and everything, these are the undercovered, hidden systemic racism that just goes, flows like sewage beneath all of our feet, and we act like it's not there. So.
Good way of putting it. Another thing to point out with regards to that education gap that you mentioned, Lee, is that now that a lot of teaching is happening virtually, that education gap is being felt even more strongly because poor, predominantly black, brown, and of course indigenous communities don't have access to Wi-Fi or laptops or iPads and things like that on which they're expected to do their homework or do their schooling, so that education gap is widening during the pandemic.
Right, because the truly poor in this country are sitting at home without a computer and without doing online courses. So some other things going on this week as we just fire off some topics here. Donald Trump poll numbers are in the toilet. Obviously that's causing him to be even more erratic and rageful than normal. COVID-19 rates are higher than ever. Luckily, we have shown COVID-19 how America works. We don't give a
USA.
fuck about
USA.
you. We aren't going to change our lifestyles to deal with you. So now you're going to kill our grandparents and our parents. Yeah, look at us. Look how cool we are. Fuck you, COVID-19. I'm going to go to a bar with 80,000 people and cough right in their face. I'm not, Donald Trump's fans have replaced the handshake hello with the cough hello. Just to show they don't give a shit. It is amazing how politicized just science has become. Just listening to science. I mean, I guess that isn't a surprise considering how politicized climate change has been for years. But it seems like we should listen to science.
Well, and now, I mean, people. So I was walking out I was walking outside the apartment the other day, and I was just walking really to get my bike, and I didn't have a mask on, and people looked at me almost as if I was a Trump supporter because I wasn't wearing a mask at that moment. And it's like, dude, I'm just walking like 5 feet. There's no one around me. But it's become this thing where it's like, oh, if you're not wearing a mask at all times, then you must be a Trump supporter. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't wear a mask. I'm just saying that at the moment, I was by myself, no one around me.
I wear none on my face and then nothing but one mask to cover my cock. And then if anyone gets upset, I'm like, I'm wearing a mask.
I think most guys would say that they're a 2-mask cock, at least. So that's...
It takes me 2 masks. Yeah. Moving on real quickly, some good news. Iran issued an arrest warrant for Donald Trump for the killing of General Soleimani.
Which I love. So now I feel like I posted this on Twitter earlier today. The Democrats must be in this very awkward position of feeling like, I mean, we hate Iran because America, but at the same time, oh my gosh, they're making Trump look bad, and we literally that shit's like like lifeblood to us. Oh God, how do we address this situation?
Right. So it's basically it's not just the Democrats. It's also mainstream media. It's all of the Mick resistance, which now apparently includes Dick Cheney and John Bolton because they've been put on that list. But so.
Well, hey, Dick Cheney has a gay child, so I think all of his war crimes should be
wiped off the map,
zeroed out because
But so they really the Mick resistance heads must be popping like popcorn right now when they have to choose between, do I support Iran and their arrest warrant, or do I support Donald Trump and saying no, fuck Iran, we need to bomb them. I did actually, if you give me 1 second, fill some time.
I'll give you 2.
I did a poll about this on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. I've just learned about the Twitter poll thing. That's a thing that you can do.
You are behind the times, my friend.
I am.
Iran issued an arrest warrant for Donald Trump. Choice A, I support Trump. Choice B, I support Iran. Choice C, CNN, tell me what to think. And what we have so far, we have almost 3,000 votes. There's still time to vote. If you'd like to vote, I'm at Lee Camp on Twitter. We have almost 3,000 votes. We have almost 19% support Trump, 62% support Iran, and 19% say CNN, tell me what to think. So there you go. That's a completely scientific poll of the world at large. Okay, speaking of Twitter, I thought I'd do something a little different today and go through some tweets from some relatively important or known people, and we'll use them as an inroad to the topic at hand. Of these, only one of these tweets. Oh, okay, 2 of these tweets are from shitheads, but most of them are from relatively okay people. I have 2 tweets from Robert Reich, and he's an economist, and he's one of the few talking about and I actually have a video about this coming out tomorrow, I think, talking about the economic I call it an economic tsunami. That is we're in the shadow of it. Like, you know, when a tsunami hits, the water on the beach actually gets sucked away, so the beach goes farther out than you've ever seen it, like a mile out, and all of a sudden the beach is blank, and you're like, what's going on? And it's because all that water is being sucked into the tsunami. Right now, we're staring at the beach and going, there's a bigger beach. This is fun.
Guys, bring out your chairs.
So Robert Reich says, brace yourself. The wave of evictions and foreclosures in the next 2 months will be unlike anything America has ever experienced since the Great Depression. And unless Congress extends extra unemployment benefits beyond July 31st, we're also going to have unparalleled hunger. That's, for those who don't know, that's $600 of unemployment. Is it a week? But and the $600 additional dollars. So that's what will end at the end of July. He continues in a separate tweet. Ask yourself how, during a global pandemic in the worst economy since the Great Depression, with 45 million Americans filing for unemployment, the total net worth of U.S. billionaires has climbed from $2.9 trillion to $3.5 trillion. The system is rigged.
Yeah, and also, yes, that is $6. Well, basically, $600 a week for unemployment benefits that are set to expire on July 31st.
Right, they've been increased by $600, and to most people, to a lot of people that are getting those, that is night and day. That is the difference between, like, this pandemic has not come crashing down on people, and then it is.
Well, right. And I mean, to be clear, that this is still, I mean, a lot of people, I can speak just from experience here in D.C., where some people have access to that. But again, the gaps on who is considered eligible to receive unemployment benefits, I mean, the gap between the haves and the have-nots is huge, right? Of course, undocumented workers are not going to see any unemployment benefits. Also, a lot of domestic workers, sex workers, street vendors. There are so many people that are not included,
right,
that could even ask. And then there are people that have sent in requests for unemployment benefits and just not gotten them. Or I've heard cases of people getting like an envelope in the mail that says, hey, your unemployment benefits are here, but then there's no check. And so basically it's just like a fuck you. Like, they get to mark in their system, I guess, that somebody got benefits, but they never actually did. So there's so many people, even in the column of you should be eligible, that aren't getting it. So even now there's an extreme need, from folks that have really felt this hit hard. And of course, that's only going to be exacerbated when everybody's in that same boat at the end of July.
Right, and people aren't really talking about how dire this economy is. I mean, it's because Trump runs around, and this shows how important and powerful the bully pulpit is, just having that ability to speak to the nation. It's like, no matter how much everyone bickers over how fucking obnoxious he is or all this shit, it's like he has a big impact in saying, oh, no, the economy's fine, it's going to be fine. And the truth is, it is on the cusp of this insane collapse where, like, businesses, even with the business loans, can't stay afloat. All of a sudden, restaurants have to, they only going to have 3 tables instead of 12 or whatever, so they can have enough room in the place for social distancing, and all this stuff is like, it's just all going to come collapsing down in the span of a few months. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's going to get very ugly, And of course, Congress should extend these benefits. I mean, they should absolutely, for one thing, they should institute a universal basic income of like $2,000, like going forever. Like, let's just do that. They should tell corporations, or make it in the bills, that corporations that get these bailouts, the bailouts must go to the workers. They must go to keep those employees so they don't fire them. That's what Denmark did, and Denmark's unemployment is still around 4 or 5%. So it's like, this is coming crashing down uniquely on America. I mean, I'm sure other countries are going to get hit really hard, but we have done such a horrible job of dealing with this that
Well,
it's going to hit bad.
And of course, that really that really speaks to the push for people to go back to work, which is of course where we see the spike in cases. In reality, we should not have opened up as soon as we did in places like California and Arizona. But the need from both, of course, corporations and bosses were like, yeah, get back to work and boost my bottom line. But workers were also feeling that push because they're like, well, I'm broke. I'm not getting any money. I'm getting this measly unemployment, or I'm not getting it at all. I need to go back to work. Let me get back to work. And so there's, even the workers themselves are pushing to put themselves, potentially at death's door just so they can survive, because there's no option. There's no choice to be like, actually, I'd rather be safe and healthy and still eat and not go back to work until it's really safe, which is, what we see happening in places like New Zealand, or, you mentioned Denmark, which is why Denmark isn't letting any Swedes in, because the Swedes right now are just being fucking idiots. And as a Swede, I'm saying that it's just ludicrous, but that's a different story. Point being that it's really, this reminds me of how workers in a lot of sacrifice zones, workers who work at chem plants or in coal mines, who have these horrifically poisonous jobs, but they want those jobs because the choice is to either watch your family starve or to take this job.
Right.
It's no choice at all.
People will take a job to dig their own grave if it's all that the only option they have.
Right.
And, it reminds me of when in Oak Flats in Arizona, where they were bragging that the mining in Oak Flats, which is Native American ground, they go, well, this other Native American tribe is selling us water for the mining operation, so we've given them jobs. And you're like, yeah, people will sell you, like, the fucking water they need to drink if they think it'll give them money to feed their families.
Yeah, that's capitalism.
So it's like saying, oh, look, they have jobs. It's not an answer. It's still destructive. But yeah, I don't know. This economic tsunami that's crashing down on us, and people are not talking about it. So at least Robert Reich is.
And we are.
But it's insane. And as he mentions, it's not just that the economy is going to have this terrible crash. It's that the rich are getting richer than ever. The U.S. billionaires has gone, he says, from $2.9 trillion to $3.5 trillion. That's over $500 billion added to the wealth of billionaires. They are just raking it in. I mean, Bezos himself has gained like 40 or 50 billion. It's truly horrific. You cannot imagine the amount of money that is just flowing into the pockets of the richest people in the country. And our inequality index was already bad, and now this is just exacerbating it. Mm-hmm. So I felt like this was a good tweet to follow up that one with how fucking blind the mainstream Democrats are, the corporate Democrats. While that's going on, while we have all this economic hardship that is crashing down on Americans, average Americans, here's Adam Schiff's tweet from today. One of the Democrat leaders, the leaders of the resistance, the leaders of the Russiagate horseshit McCarthyist story we've been told for years. Adam Schiff said, John Bolton is telling Americans what we already know. Trump is exactly what he appears to be. Petty, self-serving, ignorant, and utterly supplicant to autocrats. History will judge Trump and the enablers who did nothing to stop him harshly. Adam Schiff doesn't get it, but he is one of those enablers because he's enabled the things that they don't want to actually impeach Trump for. He's enabled enriching yourself for the presidency by not impeaching Trump for that. He's enabled, racism by not impeaching Trump for that. He's enabled so many things. He's enabled war crimes, and actually they've pushed Trump. They've tried to push Trump to create more war crimes than he so far has been willing to do. Now, I don't want to say that because Trump is some pure-hearted man who doesn't want to kill innocent Syrians, but Trump is doing things for his ego and what he thinks his voters want, and his voters actually did. He sold them a bill of goods that was, I'm going to bring the troops home, and Now he can't do it basically because the deep state and the military-industrial complex are like, you're not bringing any fucking troops home.
Well, and basically, this is just the status quo for presidents, is that they say a bunch of shit. Like Obama said that he was going to get people universal health care. He also said that he was going to close out the wars and close Gitmo, which, add that to the column of things people never fucking talk about, the fact that Guantanamo is still open. But yeah, so I mean, this is just the par for the course in terms of what presidents do. They promise the world on a plate, and then they get into office and they're like, actually, none of that's happening.
Right, and part of it is if you look at their records, or Donald Trump, you just look at his personality, you can tell they're not actually going to fight for these things. Like if you looked at Obama tricked me in 2008. I mean, I was pretty young, but tricked me in 2008, and I supported him because of what he was saying. But if you look at his actual record, he was. Even in his Chicago Senate days, he was nothing spectacular, and he was supported by Robert Rubin, the former Treasury Secretary, in his earliest days. And so, if you have the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Bill Clinton's Treasury Secretary, running around to all his Wall Street buddies saying this is our guy, then you know something's up.
Then you're not the people's guy.
But I wasn't able to do that research at that age. So.
Well, no, and I mean, I think, God, how old was I? I was 22 when I voted for Obama in 2008. So yeah, I mean, this is and hope and change. God, that sounded nice. And I was, I'm a recovering Democrat. I believed that if we just voted for enough Democrats, everything would be fine. And then I watched as Obama lorded over a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate, and I thought, oh, you fuckers are all the same. Okay.
But what do you think it is that makes the Democrats like Adam Schiff so blind to what's fucking going on? I mean, they're making it about John Bolton and how he's a liberal hero now. That's what they want to talk about when there's so much that needs to be actually tackled in this
because
country.
The only thing the Democrats are focused on is anti-Trump, which is why I love the idea of them sweating with regards to Iran, because they hate Trump so much and they hate Iran so much that there must be fucking stars colliding in their head right now, nuclear reactions going off, because they just can't handle this collision of realities. But I mean, that's the thing. It's like Hillary's whole platform was I'm not Trump. Biden's whole platform is I'm not Trump. The Democrats only exist as the antithesis to Trump, when in reality they're not even the antithesis to Trump, because they align with Trump. They continuously vote on giving him unlimited war powers, unlimited surveillance powers. They vote they okay his budgets. So the idea that they are the antithesis is bullshit, but that's what they stand for. They stand for the idea of we're not Trump, which is not a stance. That's like saying that I don't like peas. Okay, but what does that mean? What does that mean for your platform? What are you for? Are you for...
I can tell you one thing, not John Bolton. There's very similar. Joe Biden is, he says he is against defunding the police. So you have that.
Right, yeah. I thought you were going to say he's for afternoon naps.
Listen, that's one of those show don't tell issues. He prefers to show people the afternoon naps.
But yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. It's they show through their actions, but their public platform is just we're not Trump and be afraid of Trump. Actually, speaking of this sort of bullshit platform, Ajamu Baraka, who is a brilliant organizer and one of the, I don't know what his specific title is over at Black Alliance for Peace,
but he was vice presidential candidate for the Green Party last time around.
Right. But I'd say that's one of his, his achievements or whatever that's lower down on the list. He's done some amazing stuff. But he tweeted today that Puffy Combs told us in 2004, vote or die, because Bush represents an existential threat. We survived. In 2020, Beyonce is telling us vote like our lives depend on it. Let me tell you what our lives actually depend on. More people joining organizations and becoming active beyond voting. And I think that's the key. It's like everyone, I keep seeing all of these fucking posts. This is the election of your life. I've been hearing that since I was allowed to vote. They can't all be the fucking election of your lifetime. And the bottom line is that the Democrats and the Republicans are banking on the fact that we're goldfish and that we won't remember that they pulled this shit last time. We voted for the lesser of two evils. We got more evil. And here we are 4 or 8 years later doing the same fucking song and dance. And they're laughing literally and figuratively all the way to the fucking bank because they're still in power regardless of whether you vote for the blue MAGA hat or the red MAGA hat.
Right, and yeah, that I mean that's the problem. At the end of the day, this doesn't actually make much difference to them. I mean, they're largely going to go home to their mansions, and we have created a plutocracy which is ruled by the wealthy, and they at the end of the day, they just want to protect their class. It is a class war rather than a actual war between the right and the left, and it's just tough to get people to notice that or believe that when they're buying into the kind of corporate media, like you're either in the MAGA hat wearing fuck Black Lives Matter group, or you're in the Black Lives Matter fuck the MAGA group, and you should hate each other. And as long as they have this warring against each other, I mean, that's what Trump's counting on. By the way, I said at the beginning that Trump's poll numbers are in the toilet. They are. However, no one that I've seen in mainstream media will mention that 1 out of 12 voters has been purged. Like, it's not even a conversation. I mean, they'll talk about how Trump's trying to make a big deal about mail-in ballots because he doesn't want people mailing in their ballots because that will ruin their kind of closing of polling places suppression.
Well, because Lee, they can't mention the purging because then when Trump wins in November, they can't turn around and be like, well, obviously it must be Russia because look, Trump wasn't that popular and somehow he won, and it's obviously nothing to do with voters being purged.
The fact that we had a corpse candidate.
Or the fact that millions and millions of voters were either purged from the voter rolls or made ineligible day of voting or not allowed to vote because of polling places closing. None of that, but Russia.
Not the fact that you can see straight through the eye holes of our candidate into his empty brain cavity because he has already begun decomposing. That's not the problem. The problem is Russia. Actually, we may, if we have time, we may get to that Russia. Well, maybe I'll do it right after this. Quick notes, live stream, I mentioned this Friday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, youtube.com/Moment of Clarity. Come join us there. Also, Eleanor's movie is at hardroadofhope.com. It's received all kinds of awards and honors. Check it out, hardroadofhope.com. It's an incredible documentary. My comedy special is free and has been viewed by 63,000 people already on YouTube.
Should be more,
God damn it. It's at leecampamerican.com. It's free. Why would you not watch it? Why would you? You know what? You're insulting. If you don't watch it, you're insulting those 63,000 people. You're saying, I'm better than you. I don't need to look at Lee's special. By the way, my special has suddenly become more topical than it was maybe when I made it. It was filmed 2 years ago. It came out over a year ago. But most of it all still applies. I mean, all of it still applies. However, I began it and ended the special, the hour-long special, with something about the Confederate statues. I also have a large chunk about getting rid of or defunding the police. So it very much applies today.
Yeah, I had a conversation with some folks today about promotion for my film because I'm looking for help in promoting the film, and they were like, "Well, what's your timeline here?" And I was like, "Well, I don't really have a strict timeline, both because of the weird times we're in, and also because really, unfortunately, the shit in the film's gonna be true." Like,
I don't see corporate destruction in West Virginia going away.
Unfortunately, it's gonna be true, and on the very off chance that it all gets cleaned up in the next few months, then it's just a cool historical piece at that point.
A couple more quick things. If you feel you're getting anything out of this episode, please go to patreon.com/commoncensored. I've updated the tiers recently. You can get a signed copy of my book for becoming a member at a rather low level. And my book you can also purchase. It's 10% off at leecampbook.com. Use the coupon code, the initials of the title, BPAPL. Bullet points
rad.
and punchlines. All of Eleanor's stuff, Art Killing Apathy. You can email us at commoncensored@protonmail.com. I'll mention some of that again at the end. Let's move on. I was thinking maybe I'd jump ahead just for a second because this is the story that... So we mentioned this on the live stream, but it's too important to just leave it on the live stream. I want to get it to you guys as well. It's a story that's on all the corporate media. Russia paid, or a Russian maybe paid or offered to pay a Taliban troop or troops to kill a U.S. troop or troops or maybe an allied troop. And
something about a troop.
And all the mainstream media is running around anonymous sourcing, right? There's no face to any of this. Anonymous sourcing. And I just want to read you. I felt David Swanson put it best. This is from David Swanson's article. He's an author. He writes a lot of great stuff about ending war. David Swanson said, "The New York Times claims that Russia offered to pay Afghans to kill U.S. and allied troops. It does not claim that any payments were made. It does not claim that any troops were killed. It does not claim that any impact was had on anything. It does not name its sources. It does not offer any evidence other than the supposed assertions of nameless government officials. It does not offer any justification for not naming them. It does not provide the context of all the years the U.S. government spent arming and funding Afghans to kill Russians, nor all the more recent years during which the U.S. military has been both the enemy of the Taliban and its top funding source, or maybe second to opium. That's not a joke. We fund them and fight them in Afghanistan."
Yeah.
And finally, he says, the article promotes the ridiculous and debunked Russiagate notion that Trump is too kind to Russia. And that really sums it all up. I mean, this New York Times article, which then the Wall Street Journal said, we've confirmed it. But if you actually look within the article, they say, if confirmed, multiple times. So you haven't confirmed it. You've just written another article saying the same thing they said so that CNN and MSNBC can say multiple sources are reporting.
Well, and this really speaks to the media literacy issue, which, Lee, you and I have talked about this several times, but it always bears repeating. This is the kind of shit that folks should be, taught in school to look for. Hey, kids, what's questionable about this article? It says if confirmed like half a fucking dozen times, which
Right.
means it's not confirmed, because if it had been confirmed, they wouldn't write if fucking confirmed.
Right.
So, I mean, it's so important, and this shit just washes over us, right? Because we've grown up with it, and we've also grown up thinking like, oh, well, we just trust the New York Times, and we trust these big, I call them like big box media companies that basically just, spew, what you call them the stenographers for the State Department, but we're programmed to believe that they're telling us the truth. So we'll just wash past that line if confirmed. We'll wash past like anonymous source or
We'll wash past
higher up at the intelligence agency or whatever the fuck.
We'll wash past the fact that the New York Times just a week or two ago admitted now that they printed falsehoods about the Bolivian, it resulted in the Bolivian coup, and that coup was largely based on stories about fraudulent elections, about election fraud, that the New York Times is now reporting they printed falsehoods. And the New York Times helped create that coup that resulted in Evo Morales fleeing the country.
Well, and this is, of course, nope, lost it.
But I like where you're headed with that, though.
I was going to agree with you, regardless of whatever just happened in my head. I was going to agree with you.
But they do this. They create coups in places like Bolivia, anywhere there's a leftist government. I'm sure they're working on Mexico. And then occasionally, if you keep watching months later, they'll go, oopsie, so that they can
that's
claim that it's too late. I mean, it changes nothing. They did the same thing with the OPCW reports on the chemical weapons in Syria. They supported all we got to bomb Syria because of chemical weapons. We got to bomb to stop their bombing. It's going to our bombing is going to fix their bombing because of chemical weapons. And then 4 whistleblowers came out from the OPCW. At first, the New York Times refuted all that, and then eventually they said, "Oh, looks like we were wrong about those whistleblowers."
That's what I was going to say, is that it's really convenient, and these media corporations really make a living off of the ability to print lies and then backpedal later when they know no one is going to read that retraction. Or even if they read that retraction, it's not going to be able to chisel away that perception that person now has, which is of course the case with everything from Russiagate to this current issue with the OPCW, or like any of this. It's, oh well, I already read that, I've already internalized it, and then I've heard it bolstered on a bunch of other fucking corporate media outlets. Now that I read one retraction, it's not enough.
And then sometimes they even leave the original story up,
right?
Like unaltered, or only there's a slight note at the bottom or whatever. A good example, I don't know if it's still up, but they were claiming months ago, they were claiming Kim Jong-un had the delegation that met with Trump, because remember the negotiations fell through and it was a big embarrassment that the negotiations didn't work. And so New York Times and others ran with Kim Jong-un has delegation killed. Like kills his own nuclear delegation,
right,
because they didn't succeed with Trump. And so they run with that. And then, I don't know if it was weeks or months later, that delegation is seen walking around North Korea. And so photos come out of them alive and well, and still apparently in Kim Jong-un's good graces. And the New York Times did report, delegation still alive. They didn't remove the article saying they'd been killed.
Right.
So I could go, and if I'm arguing with my friend or on Facebook or whatever, and say, no, Kim Jong-un killed that delegation, I could still link to the New York Times with an utterly false article.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Amazing. But the other thing this type of horseshit does, in terms of this article with Russia and Afghanistan, is that it makes Trump look right, look intelligent, look prescient, that he says the mainstream media is fake news designed to hurt him. And then these type of stories come out, and they are essentially either fake news or, we will probably never know whether there's any reality to this whatsoever. And it makes Trump look like he's absolutely right.
Well, and of course, this only feeds the sort of false dichotomy that you have to either believe Trump on everything or hate Trump and not believe him on anything. So thus starts the windfall of people who will lash out at you and probably more you than me, but that will lash out at people for saying that there's absolutely no proof of this. This is absolute bullshit. There's no evidence to suggest that Russia would have any interest or has had any interest in doing this.
Like they would need to pay the Taliban to try and kill U.S. soldiers.
I know.
The Taliban was already, that's all they've been doing for 20 years.
You'd have to pay people to not want to be brutalized by the cops in the U.S. It's fucking absurd. It's ludicrous. But thus begins the windfall.
You're referring to the hilarious articles that Russia was paying Black Lives Matter activists.
By the way, several people have reached out to me and claimed and or questioned whether my film was funded by Soros. I just like to say that if it had been, I would have shot that with a better camera.
Well, you're still waiting for those massive Soros checks to come rolling in.
I really am. And I'm beginning to think that the lizard people took them, because I have not seen any checks. And you'd have to be pretty sneaky, like a lizard person, in order to steal those checks. So
let's just settle this here. Who did fund this incredibly expensive film? I think it was mainly you.
It was mainly me and the patrons that I have over at patreon.com/actout. But yeah, I mean, this will start the back and forth again that, like, well, if you don't think that it was Russia, then you must be a Trump fan. Because those are the only two options. I can either think that Russia has nothing better to do than convince poor black and brown people that they don't want to be shot by police, or I can love Trump. Like, what the... holy balls. Those are, yeah.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Let's get back to our Twitter running the
Sorry,
show.
was that a tangent?
No, I liked it. I liked it. We needed it. We need every once in a while. You need a little tangent to shake things up.
Clear the palate.
To clear the palate. Let's get back to our Twitter running the show this week. Although I'm only reading the important tweets. This is from the NSA. The NSA, and really this is only that interesting because of Edward Snowden's response. But the NSA tweeted, "Are you a software or systems engineer? Our capabilities group may be the place for you. Work with emerging technologies to develop the technical capability to store, organize, and query hundreds of petabytes of data." Edward Snowden then responded, "You too can get access to hundreds of petabytes of data, perfect records of our private lives, that the NSA routinely ingests about people who have never been suspected of any wrongdoing. They'll tell you this is legal, they'll say it's constitutional, but you'll know better." So that's Edward Snowden.
Point to Edward Snowden.
Edward Snowden responding to his former bosses.
What the fuck? Side note, what the fuck is a petabyte?
I don't even want to know.
Okay.
That's one of those things where they're like, well, you know, all of the human information, everything that was ever said or thought up until 1895, that would be half a petabyte of data. Like, that's like, it would be something like that. And you're like, holy goddamn.
I don't even want to.
I mean, we learn, you know, they say like there's more information in one New York Times, granted false information, but there's more information in one New York Times than the average person in like the 17 and 1800s got in their entire lifetime. Like,
absolutely.
Took in their entire lifetime.
Yeah. And something like, I think they said like, however many hundred years ago, it was possible to read all of the books that had ever been printed within your lifetime. And now it's like, well, obviously that's laughable.
You couldn't read all the books that come out in a single day, probably.
Right.
Across your life. But so back to this NSA thing. The other reason I found this, great point by Edward Snowden, but the other reason I found this important is because this all keeps going on no matter how much we're distracted.
Right.
You know, we're worried about some legitimate things such as the pandemic. We're worried about some illegitimate things like Russia. A Russian guy who moved to Afghanistan said to a Taliban man, "I'll give you $100, you kill someone." And that means that Russia has a program that we're not going to tell you anything about that no one can actually prove exists to kill U.S. troops. So there's that horse shit. And while we're worrying about all that stuff, we're worrying about, you know, Trump is, he tweeted a video where a guy said white power at the end of it. It's fucking disgusting. But while we're focusing on all of that, this keeps going on, smooth as anything.
It really speaks to the essential businesses of empire, right? Like the NSA has not shuttered its doors because of the pandemic. If anything, they've ratcheted up because now they're into, well, we're helping because we want to know where that diseased person has been. So we're helping you. So if anything, you know, surveillance has ratcheted up since this whole thing started. And of course, our wars continue to rage, and our environmental destruction is considered essential business. So really, I just got a press release today from forest defenders up in Northern California who have started again a blockade against the loggers trying to cut down old growth and ancient redwoods up there. This is fucking considered essential business. News alert, also, California is now considered to be, once again, a hotspot for COVID, and yet it's a good time to cut down trees, which, by the way,
I mean, there's open spaces out there.
There was a recent study that shows how important trees are in stifling the spread and the growth of pandemics, not least of all because they fucking give us oxygen. But that's, aside. So these destructive and these Orwellian systems continue to roll along, regardless of how shitty the economy is doing, regardless of how many people are dying from a global pandemic. It's,
Yeah, these things that the surveillance of all of us continues at pace with really nothing interrupting it, and the people this indicts the most, I guess, because the Republicans are like, oh yeah, we want this, we want everyone surveilled, I guess, whereas Democrats are supposed to be the ones that would stand up against something like this, and they fucking don't at all. So I mean, what maybe 2-3 people in Congress, all of Congress, raise alarms about this type of thing? It's like Rand Paul and no one else. I mean, it's fucking pathetic.
Well, I mean, and the thing is that if somebody does, they're usually silenced. I mean, if it's somebody who has a lot of like clout or whatever, like Bernie, Bernie has recently come out and said you should cut the military budget by 10%, which, I mean, I agree, but 10% is nothing. The military budget should be cut by at least 70%, and even then, it's extravagant.
Yeah, he should have. If he wants to bargain, he should have started at 70% and then said, "Okay, I'll go back to 65."
Right, because to be clear, the only reason that any country should have a military force is for defense purposes. No one should fucking have an offensive army, but ours is only an offensive
Purely
army.
offensive.
I mean, besides Pearl Harbor, which was technically not even the United States, if you want to really be honest about, I mean, fucking the continent that we're on, the U.S. has never, ever been invaded. The only wars that have been fought here have been the Civil War, which, I mean, again, that was between us, I guess, and the Revolutionary War, which was technically before we were a country. So really, the only fucking wars, and of course there have been other wars. That's not like the only. There have been. There's been wars between the U.S. and the indigenous peoples. Of course, there have been wars between what was then Mexico with regards to Texas and that kind of thing. But I mean, like, the only time that it was the United States and there was like shit that went down was the Civil War. So we've never been invaded by an external force, an external country.
What about the War of 1812? Still a long time ago.
Okay, fair.
But that might be the last time.
The only time.
Yeah, the only time.
The only time. Well, because here's the thing. When we talk about Mexico fighting the US over, what is now Texas,
that was us stealing it from Mexico.
Right. So I don't consider that Mexico invading, because then that would predetermine that Texas belonged to the U.S., which is fucking stupid.
Right.
So,
and the Spanish-American War was made up. We just made that up, basically.
So yeah. I mean, and if you're a historian and there's something outside of 1812 that I'm forgetting, please let me know. But bottom line is, it doesn't fucking happen. So
At
the idea that we would need
not since the electric razor was invented.
Okay, I don't know when that was. I use a manual.
Still, I can say this with certainty because I'm pretty sure there wasn't electric light bulbs either. So
it'd be weird if there were electric razors
yeah.
before electric light bulbs.
Yeah.
I agree. Do dudes still? Well, you don't really shave. You've got the beard thing. But do men still use like regular razors? Is that a thing?
Apparently,
I think my dad does,
it is a thing.
I think my dad
there's
does.
commercials for them nonstop. And I don't know. And then there was the Dollar Shave Club, which was something where they sell you pieces of metal. And I don't.
I want to know if anyone uses a straight razor.
I think some do. Well, then there's that. Then there's that. So there's a whole industry, and I'm glad we got off on this tangent. There's a whole industry of of quasi-meaningless gifts that people buy for each other because they look nice and you can give them on a Christmas or whatever, and it looks like a nice thing to give someone that people don't use. And there's a whole shop for that called like the Art of Shaving or something. And you see them in the malls, and it looks really nice. And there's the guy in suspenders inside, and the Art of Shaving, and they sell the little thing where it goes.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
You make up the
where it sounds like you're fapping.
When you make the shaving cream, you make I think it's homemade shaving cream. I don't know what it's made out of. But anyway, you sit there and then you have a little long brush and you put that on and everything. And it's basically takes shaving, which should take 3 minutes, and it makes it take 45. And And you give this to your dad, and he goes, "Oh, this is so nice." And it probably cost you $900 or something. And he goes, "Oh, this is so nice." And then a week later, he tries it once or twice, and then he realizes that he'd rather have that 45 minutes back, and he goes back to the electric razor, or a regular razor, but it's not the art of shaving. He's just using blunt force shaving.
This is also like the make your own cocktail kits,
Yes.
where it's like 40
Yes.
different ingredients.
Yes.
And yeah, no.
Or
those are-
the like all of the various instruments and things for like an elegant sushi dinner.
Oh God, yeah.
Like little tiny bowls and things. Not that you're necessarily going to make the sushi yourself, but that you're going to put it all out in this gorgeous, lay it on this gorgeous thing. And I think maybe it is for you to make the sushi. But anyway, so you get basically 45 bowls and tiny bowls, 45 tiny bowls, and you give them to someone, and they're like, "Oh my God!" And you can tell it costs $175, and you use it once.
You know, what cooking shows have
and then it gets put on a
basically-
street corner with a little sign that says free,
Right.
so that a homeless person can have a really nice sushi if
Set.
they're able to get access to the sushi.
Cooking shows basically created the industry that IKEA then capitalized on, of like the medium-sized bowls that can only hold like the cheese shavings,
Right,
or like the
right,
minced onion.
right.
That when you're cooking at home, you never do that. You never put these in like these ingredients in their own fucking bowl, because you're not showing it to anyone.
Well, also cooking secret. This is a chef's top secret trick. You can put things that would go in a little bowl into a larger bowl, and it will still hold them. It still works. It works just like a little bowl. I know this aspect has just destroyed people for years. People have been, where do the minced onions go? We don't have a bowl that size. But it turns out you can use a big bowl.
But okay, as someone who is slightly OCD, and I really appreciate when things fit really nicely, I have to say,
Please tell me that's what you tell people before sex.
well, that's why I think it's important that you size your strap-on appropriately.
Ah, fair enough.
That's all I'm saying. Happy Pride Month, everyone.
What were you about to say? Things that fit really nicely.
Well, now obviously I don't remember. Completely sidetracked my brain. And sidetracked this entire podcast.
Oh yeah, this podcast is done. This is done. But you know what? That's why all the people listening right now, you're my favorites, because you hung in there, and you're like, I bet you there's going to be a 10-minute riff on shaving Christmas presents.
That ends with a strap-on comment.
Well, you got to end with strap-on comment. I mean, you can't go after that. You can't keep going after that. No, you can't.
Well, now what do we do?
Well, now we have 5 more minutes to go over this last tweet that is pretty incredible. Public Citizen tweeted out, breaking, Gilead, which is this big pharma company, is planning on charging, or maybe they currently are charging. No, I think planning on charging. So, hold on. Let me back up before I read the tweet. Remdesivir is, many of you have probably already read about
it. Sounds like a Lord of the Rings character.
Is one of the tiny ones.
It's one of the a hobbit.
Hobbit,
or
yeah.
a dwarf.
Yeah. Remdesivir is the drug that is showing a lot of promise with helping to fight COVID-19. So it's not a vaccine. It's not going to stop you from getting it. But if you get it and are in dire straits, it's apparently shown a lot of promise in terms of helping you recover. And the death rate is lower and those type of things. So they're rushing it to market. And Gilead has announced it will be charging $3,000 or more for this COVID drug, this COVID-19 drug. Now, that's, as you said when I brought this up earlier today, you said that's disgusting enough. But what gets even more disgusting is taxpayers spent, this is from Public Citizen, taxpayers spent $70 million to develop this drug. From our government, we paid the government paid Gilead to create this drug, and now Gilead is charging us $3,000 a pop for this drug. And as Public Citizen says, it should be public domain. It should be free for anyone who has COVID-19.
This is also a bit of a side note. I thought I recognized that name, Gilead. It's from the Bible, where
Sorry, was I saying Gilead? Gilead.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how the Hebrews originally said.
I confused
Gilead.
it with Gillette because I was thinking about razors still.
Is apparently the name. 3 people are named Gilead in the Bible. 2 places are named Gilead in the Bible. There's some disagreement on what it actually means, but either way, I just thought that was interesting. I thought that sounded familiar.
I mean, it sounds like something from the Bible, charging someone $3,000 to survive.
But that's
a
exactly
pandemic.
it. It's like it just feels so American, right? Like Jesus loves you. Now make sure that you pay enough so that the mega church can have a fucking helipad. Like, it just feels so American, this bullshit. And by the way, as another side note, even if taxpayers hadn't spent $70 million to develop this drug, which the fact that we have, blah. But even if they hadn't, fuck you. How dare you charge $3,000+? I mean, that's absolutely insane.
Yeah, and for those who don't have insurance or have shitty insurance where we'll cover $1,000, you owe $2,000. And by the way, if you're in the hospital dealing with COVID-19 and they give you this drug, this is one of many things you will owe money for. This is not just $3,000. This is probably, someone survived COVID-19, got out of the hospital, and this was a news story recently, got a bill for $800,000.
Oh yeah, and they noted that it'll probably be much more than that.
So how many COVID-19 deaths are from people taking their own lives because they know the hospital bill?
Well, but that's the other thing is that, like, when you're in this situation, it's not something. I mean, I guess sometimes there might be do you want this treatment? This is how much it's going to cost. But I know that at least in emergency room situations and in a lot of situations, particularly if you're unconscious, they will just give you medicine. And then that shit just gets tacked onto your bill. So it's like,
how is it they're even keeping track of this stuff? They're like in the ambulance and they're like, someone's sitting there with one of those little cashier calculators, tick 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 ching, tick 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 ching.
Yeah, you know. Well, see, the thing is, most people are unconscious in the ambulance, so they don't hear the ching going off. But I remember this because when I was in the emergency room, they were dabbing Neosporin, and the only reason I remember
she's
this,
a cutter, folks. So she was cutting herself.
The window was a cutter.
Yeah, she tried to open a window, accidentally it cut her wrists, and
it was okay. Yeah, my arms accidentally went through the window as opposed to opening it. But
note
anyway,
to everyone listening: if you're gonna open a window, don't put your hands through it.
Okay, you know what? Now I have to tell the story because you're making me like
I know
an idiot.
It was painted. I know. All right.
It was painted shut, and it was really hot, and I had to jiggle it to open it because it had gotten stuck because the paint was sticky. It was non-tempered glass.
We all get it. Okay, we got it.
So it broke in these perfect shards. Anyway, they were dabbing Neosporin on my arm after they had already sewn me up with the stitches, and each dab of Neosporin cost like $30. A fucking dab of Neosporin. Had I known, I would have brought my own BYON to the fucking emergency room, folks, because that shit is crazy pants expensive.
BYO Neosporin, BYO Remdesivir, BYO morphine,
BYO stitches.
Yeah, BYO nurse, I think is probably a good idea.
Yes.
Another note about Gilead from Public Citizen. Where'd it go? Instead, the Public Citizen, the Big Pharma is robbing us blind. What we need to shame Gilead Sciences. That's their Twitter. Yeah, that's their Twitter at Gilead Sciences into changing course. And another note: Gilead CEO makes. Do you want to guess how much a year?
I already saw it.
Oh, God damn it! You could have just sounded brilliant and said $31 million a year.
I don't want to cheat.
$31 million fucking dollars a fuck year. That's fuck. That's crazy. While we pay $3,000, while poor people who are dying pay $3,000 for Remdesivir.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's infuriating.
Indeed, it is.
I should have ended on something less angry.
Strap-ons?
You want to go back to the strap-on
I'm just saying
jokes?
they're less angry. I mean, I guess they can be angry.
What's the worst Christmas gifts you ever got? Strap-ons?
No, that would be awkward. I think it's when I was going through my fat phase, and my dad gave me a VHS of Titanic, and then he wrote on the package, "To my unsinkable Eleanor." I think that's probably it.
That's terrible.
And then he tried to like make it better, and he was like, "No, I mean that you're like so great."
to my largest ship that has ever been, Eleanor.
I mean, shit, honey, you're basically a buoy.
I don't know if it's the thought that counts. Is it the thought that counts?
No,
I
think it's just when you have a father who's a bit socially retarded. That's just what that is.
All right, folks. We're going to head over to patreon.com/common censored, do a little extra content for everybody who's signed up over there. And so please go sign up if you'd like over there. And we have a live stream coming that's free to attend the live stream this Saturday, Jesus, that's the wrong time. This Friday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. It's not that funny. At youtube.com/moment of clarity. So it's Friday at 8:30. Let me get it right. Friday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. youtube.com/moment of clarity. Come hang out with us. Come chat with us. Come throw in your topics to be discussed. Also, my comedy special, 63,000 people can't be wrong. Go to leecampamerican.com to watch it for free.
Woo!
Eleanor's new movie is at hardroadofhope.com. And let's see, my book is at leecampbook.com. All of Eleanor's writing is at artkillingapathy.com. You can email us with topics and ideas at commoncensored@protonmail.com. If you are due a book for signing up to the Patreon, then you need to email us with your address. That's commoncensored@protonmail.com. I'll leave it there. Thanks, everybody. Keep fighting.
Act out.